The greatest war was never between nations. It was, and still is, inside the human soul. We think World War II ended decades ago. But every time we obey without thinking, every time we choose belonging over truth, every time we project our fears onto others, that same war begins again. It no longer uses bombs or borders. It uses ideas, the quiet comfort of obedience. The enemy isn't out there anymore. It's within, in the parts of ourselves we refuse to see, the shadow we deny, the conscience we silence for the sake of acceptance. This story isn't about history. It's about the present, about the war you still fight every day, between your conditioning and your awareness, between fear and responsibility, between the mind that follows and the soul that dares to think. Because the truth is simple, the war that never ended will only cease when you decide to face the darkness that lives within you. They said the war ended. But if you listen closely, you can still hear its echo, not in the ruins of old cities, but in the architecture of the human mind. Carl Jung once warned, "The greatest danger to mankind is the psyche itself." He believed that the horrors of the 20th century were not born from politics, but from something far deeper, the eruption of the collective shadow. The shadow is everything we refuse to see in ourselves. The envy we disguise as righteousness, the hatred we call justice, the weakness we hide behind pride. When a whole society denies its darkness, it doesn't disappear. It gathers power, and when the pressure becomes too great, it bursts through wars, ideologies, and movements that promise salvation but deliver destruction. World War II was not only fought with weapons, it was fought with the human mind, with the parts of ourselves that longed for order, purity, identity at any cost. And what's most terrifying is not that humanity once fell into madness, it's that the same instincts still live in each of us. They hide behind our moral certainty, our political tribes, our digital crusades for truth. Every time we condemn others without reflection, every time we mistake emotion for reason, we repeat, unconsciously, the same psychological war our ancestors never resolved. After the war, the world searched for monsters. It wanted faces to blame, villains to condemn, as if evil could be neatly isolated and destroyed once and for all. But when philosopher Hannah Arendt watched the trial of Adolf Eichmann, a man responsible for sending millions to their deaths, she saw something far more disturbing. Not a demon, not a sadist, just a man, polite, obedient, unimaginative. A man who insisted he was merely doing his job. That realization shook the world. Evil, Arendt said, is not always radical. It is ordinary. It grows wherever people stop thinking. And that's the uncomfortable truth. Most evil doesn't come from hatred. It comes from emptiness. From the quiet surrender of conscience to ideology, to bureaucracy, to belonging. We like to think we would have resisted. But how many of us already obey systems we don't truly understand? How many repeat what's popular just to feel safe inside the herd? But the psychology remains the same. Obedience no longer wears a uniform. It hides in algorithms, in echo chambers, in the comfort of collective outrage. Every time you let the crowd think for you, you become part of a machinery that has no soul. And the banality of evil is born again, not in history books, but in your daily choices. The silence when you should speak, the conformity you mistake for virtue. When the world was reduced to ashes, one question remained. After such horror, how does one go on living? Psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, a survivor of the concentration camps, found the answer not in theory, but in the darkest reality imaginable. He watched as men were stripped of everything, their families, their names, their dignity, and yet some still refused to die inside. He noticed something extraordinary. Those who could find meaning, even in suffering, had a strength that no cruelty could destroy, not because they escaped pain, but because they transcended it. Frankl wrote that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. In a world obsessed with control, that sentence is revolutionary. It means that even when the world collapses, you still have a choice. To remain conscious, to decide who you will be within the chaos. The war taught him, and us, that survival of the body is meaningless without survival of the spirit. That freedom isn't the absence of oppression, but the presence of inner purpose. And this is how the war begins to end. not through politics or punishment, but through awareness. Through the quiet personal decision to stop projecting the darkness outward and start confronting it within. Because once you face your own shadow, you no longer need to fight the world. You begin to understand it. The war that never ended was never about nations. It was about human nature itself. Our eternal struggle between consciousness and blindness, between the courage to think and the comfort of obedience. Carl Jung showed us that the darkness we fear in others is the same darkness we hide in ourselves. Till we face that truth, we will keep fighting shadows on the outside, while the real enemy grows within. Hannah Arendt reminded us that the death of thought is the birth of evil. That morality without reflection is nothing but obedience in disguise. And that thinking, truly thinking, is a moral act. And Viktor Frankl, standing amid the ruins of everything human, proved that even when all is lost, the spirit remains free. That meaning is not something given. It's something chosen, forged in suffering, like light emerging from fire. Each of them, in their own way, revealed a single truth. The only victory that matters is the one fought within. Because every time we awaken, every time we choose awareness over ideology, responsibility over resentment, truth over comfort, a fragment of that ancient war ends. The battlefield is not history, it's your mind. It's every thought that chooses empathy instead of fear, every moment you dare to question, to forgive, to remain human in a world that forgets how. The world doesn't need another revolution. It needs an awakening. And maybe, when enough of us finally face our own shadows, when we learn to hold our power without domination, to love without illusion, to think without hate, then, quietly, without flags, without blood, the war that never ended will finally be over.